The final expansion for Blood is the definition of a mixed bag. While the expansion itself is called the Plasma Pak, the new episode included is Postmortem, and it was actually developed by Monolith Productions this time around. For those who don't know, Cryptic Passage, the first Blood expansion, was made by Sunstorm Interactive, and didn't contain any new monsters or weapon modes. Postmortem has the Acolyte, who is a green cultist that throws dynamite at you, the elite cultists who are armed with fucking Tesla cannons, as well as acid and magma pods, which are both pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, Postmortem has a few new enemies to deal with, but they don't really shake up the experience all that much. The episode itself is fine, but it's probably the weakest official set of levels in Blood. A lot of the level content was just recycled from the alpha version of the game, which might seem lazy, but I don't really mind, to be honest. I mean, I like the Doom 3 Lost missions. I would be a massive hypocrite if I complained about Monolith using old levels. Without further ado, let's get into the actual maps. If you haven't played Blood in a while, this opening level will kick your ass. If you've played Blood fairly recently, this opening level will still kick the living shit out of you. Located in an outdoor shopping plaza, E6M1 doesn't mess around, and it lets you know right off the bat that Postmortem will be the hardest episode to date.
Everybody loves somebody sometime. Not me, baby.
As soon as you go into this department store, you get assaulted by cultists, and this is an instant wake-up call. At least there's a massive window that you can jump out of to get away. Yeah, so you really want to preemptively chuck dynamite in rooms you haven't gone in yet. It'll become a habit in Postmortem. Oh, and there's 3 fucking gargoyles already, in the first level. At least afterwards you get to see some ridiculous build engine explosions. E6M1 is a compact, well-designed level, and it's one of the best levels that the episode has to offer. The next map is also set in a shopping center, and there's fucking gargoyles zipping about the place, cultists throwing sticks of dynamite from high ledges. It's crazy. The acid and magma pods make their first appearance, which is another aspect of the level to note, but they don't really make a lasting impression. I enjoy this level mostly. There's a couple of cool combat encounters, but at the same time, there's a lot of large, empty spaces that you're moving through. However, I am playing on lightly broiled, and the monster count is increased on the higher difficulties, no doubt making these rooms less barren. E6M3 suffers from the environment looking too similar, and as a result, you aren't really able to tell areas apart from one another. I guess that's the point. The level is basically a crate maze as it takes place in a storage facility. Aside from this awesome section with a small army of cultists firing down on you, most of your time is spent running about the place looking for keys to unlock the exits. The The weird thing about Postmortem is that most of the monster placement is very good, but the levels themselves range from fairly run-of-the-mill to downright bad at certain points. If we take a look back at Cryptic Passage, that expansion has excellent map layouts with intuitive design and tons of pop culture references to hold players' interest. My number one criticism with Cryptic Passage though is the lackluster combat encounters, at least on the normal difficulty. Look at that, a complete reversal. That being said, I really should count my fucking blessings and not be so harsh on E6 M3, because we have Aqueducts next. You know how I said that Cryptic Passage has uninspired enemy placement and that Postmortem has poor level design? Yeah, well, Aqueducts suffers from both. Aqueducts is the worst level in Blood, and I say that with zero doubt in my mind. I really don't mean to be so negative, especially considering that Blood is one of the best first-person shooters of its era, but man, this level is such a drag. Right out of the gate pretty much, you're bombarded by a variety of cultists. Green, blue, black, it doesn't matter what color the cultists are, they all want you dead in this opening section. Oh, and there's a turret mounted on the wall that rapidly shoots at you for good measure. From there, you go underwater to restore the power which is needed to continue on into this door. Now this is when E6 M4 becomes too fucking unfair with its enemy placements. There's cultists trying to kill you on the surface, there's cultists trying to kill you underwater, and dealing with both simultaneously is a fucking headache. Expect to restart like a dozen times, and make sure you have that quick save on deck. The underwater hit scanners are a nightmare to deal with, and there's added pressure because you could drown if the swimsuit goes. Usually I think Blood's monster placement is really well done, but in this level specifically, all of that goes out the fucking window and it becomes way too unfair. What sucks most is that there are some good moments in the level, but they get overshadowed by this first half. The onslaught of cultists on the ship is entertaining, and seeing little Calebs come out of a broken mirror Army of Darkness style never gets old. Too bad that the rest of the level is hit scan hell. At least E6 M5 gets back on track. The start of the map feels a lot more reserved than the last, as they don't throw as much crazy shit at you, unlike Aqueducts. This is a nice pace breaker, and it's deserved after the previous level. A massive crater is formed early on, and after a couple of fights with some cultists and zombies, you make your way up to the top, and it's like a classic Romero horseshoe design. There are some difficult moments however, it's not all just a walk in the park. The room where you get the life seed, then all of these enemies rush in and fireballs shoot out of the walls is chaotic but fun and also rewarding. Overall, E6 M5 is a good time, and it completely shits on the previous level. E6 M6 immediately tosses a stone gargoyle at you along with a cluster of zombies. When you walk inside the castle, you'll see that it's front-loaded with cultists, hellhounds, and bloated butchers. I love how the castle is heavily guarded like this, and it's also not completely unfair, since you can always break their line of sight by hopping outside. That's fucking great. They distract me with the 2 acolytes at the front so that the cultists up on the balcony can take pot shots to the left of me. Oh, and they also send out a gargoyle. Very tricky monster placement, but it's smart at the same time. There's a secret exit you can take in this level, and that brings you to the Forgotten Catacombs. I don't have too much to say about it. I like the overall map layout, I think the enemy placement is appropriately dickish for Blood standards, and it's a level that you can blast through pretty quickly. E6M9 is a solid time, and I find it way more palatable than the penultimate map of the episode. So there are 3 switches you need to press, and the level kinda gets tiresome by the end. This is probably my second least favourite map of the episode, the first being Aqueducts of course. The final boss of Postmortem includes 3 cultists that eventually turn into the beasts. The beast transformation was ripped straight out of an early build of the game, but it was a power-up intended for the player instead. Like I said in the beginning, I have conflicting thoughts regarding Postmortem, as some levels are good enough, while others are straight up frustrating with no redeeming qualities. The new enemies are cool to see, but they're ultimately trivial and they just blend in after a while. The level design itself is lacking, particularly in levels E6M3, E6M4, and E6M7. However, that being said, Cryptic Passage didn't have the best monster placement, so both expansions balance each other out. Cryptic Passage is the more replayable expansion by a long shot though, and that's mostly due to the major difficulty spikes and unremarkable map layouts of Postmortem. Sunstorm might have not taken full advantage of the monsters and their roles in combat, but at least their levels are enjoyable to traverse. Postmortem is the complete inverse of this, and I'd honestly take Cryptic Passage any day of the week. To speak about Blood as a whole for a minute, I still think it's one of the most finely crafted shooters to date. Nothing can take that away from Blood, even if one of the game's expansions isn't of the highest quality. Sunstorm outdid Monolith on the expansion front, but if you're seeking a brutal challenge, especially on the well done difficulty, then Postmortem is worth playing, I guess. Only for the most hardcore, rage-seeking Blood fans though.